Hello everybody, my name's Nye and I'm here to talk to you on the eve of the general election. Now the reason I'm making this very short and entirely unedited talk is because I'm aware that there's been a lot of paranoia and a lot of honest misunderstanding of how it is that your vote is actually counted. So what I'm doing is just explaining to you what actually happens. The reason I know what actually happens is that I've actually been volunteering at various counts, local elections, general elections, obviously the EU referendum, for the last 3 years. So I've got a fairly close idea what goes on, but I appreciate that not everyone does. It's a process that's quite shrouded in mystery, so although I'm not going to get into specifics, I am going to give you a general idea of what's actually happening when you put your vote in the ballot box. So first things first, there's a bit of the process that you're aware of, which is you go to the polling station. It doesn't matter whether you have your polling card or not, and then you go and you announce your name and address to the officer and they cross it off. They're going to do that every single time. They will make a record of the fact that you have voted for reasons that's going to be very clear later on. So that's your vote. It's gone in the ballot box. That is the last that the people at the polling station are going to see it. Come 10 o'clock, all the polls then close. That's when we get the first exit polls. These usually come from the BBC. The BBC will have made their exit polls earlier in the day by interviewing people at certain key polling stations. But legally, they cannot release that information until 10 p.m. So that's the first time you're going to see it. That's the first time we're going to get a vague idea of how the voting went, but remember, that is not set in stone. And the reason it's not set in stone is very simple. It's because the votes haven't been counted yet. So, this I'm holding up here, because this is very improvised talk. The vote that you place goes into two sections, verification and counting. So let's talk about verification first. What happens is, all the counters and the reps, and I will talk about them in a minute, will turn up at the counting station. This can be a school, this can be a leisure centre, whatever. It just needs to be a very big space. And everyone's lined up in their desks. The political parties are off to one side around the big tellies and near the tables. Again, I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. So, the physical boxes are brought in by armoured van, okay? At this point, your vote is still inside the box. It has not moved. It cannot move. That box is sealed until it finally arrives at the counting station. Now, in theory, they should arrive fairly briskly after 10 p.m. However, depending on geographical location, how organised the people at the polling station are, I've seen boxes trundle on in at 1:30 in the morning before now, which frankly puzzled me because I'm pretty sure I could have walked that box in faster. But anyway, the box then arrives. Now at this point it is ceremonially opened by the person behind the desk for the counters. Let me show you what's happening here with a nifty little diagram. This is the box. The box is then opened, and the actual physical votes are shook all over the desk in front of the counter and the other counter. I'll explain the other counter in a minute. The box is then shown to the party reps, who are all clustered in front of the desk with their tally charts. The box inside is black, and your ballot paper, of course, is always white. And that's so that we can all be doubly sure that there's no ballots left in there. So first things first, the actual counter's duty is to count how many votes have come out of the box. Doesn't matter which party they are for now, this is still verification. The reason they're doing that is that if they've crossed, say, 350 people off the list at your local polling station, they have to make sure that they have 350 slips in the box. That's why they will always cross you off. Because if they do not cross you off when you have been voting, they will completely bugger the verification and the whole process grinds to a halt. Okay? So at this point, your vote is being handled by the counter, who puts it all in big piles of 50. They use these massive paper clips, obviously, to clip the whole bundle together. The counts of 50 are then passed to the counter sitting next to them. They swap bundles, count them quickly, just to make sure that there are no errors or anything like that. Now, while all this is happening, your party reps have gotten involved with their little tally charts. While the counters are busy bundling up your votes, the party reps are there frantically ticking everything off on their tally charts to see if they can get a sense of how that particular box voted, of whether there was a sudden surge for one party, whether another party's dropped away, who the likely victor is yet to be. Now, obviously, they only ever get a data sample. They never know until the final count, but it's usually pretty accurate because they're actually stood in front. The party reps here can never touch your vote. The only people physically laying hands upon your vote are the counter and the other counter, but they're watching each other. The party reps are all watching. The person who brought the box is watching. There's also a returning officer. That's pretty ceremonial, but I'll explain more in a minute. And there's also an assistant returning officer who does all the actual work. So your vote is watched by about 10 different people, assuming you've got sort of 5 political parties. There's 10 different people watching your vote. It doesn't matter whether you use your own pen or whether you use a standard pencil in booth. There is no time and there is no opportunity for your vote to get tampered with. Okay? So that's verification. Once they have established that they have got the right number of votes for the right number of boxes, and this is a process that can take several hours depending on the size of your constituency, the returning officer will then announce, we have successfully verified that we have the correct number of votes. Now, at that point, all these bundles are going back into the process. All these bundles then get sent back to the counters. This time, this is the process. We've done the verification. It's now time for the count. So, this time your counter has a pile in front of them, one for each party. And again, their piles are counter-checked by the counter next to them. Party reps are still stood in front, but this time the party reps are stood in front to make sure that all their votes do end up on their piles. 99.9 something daft % of the time, there's no problem. However, it does help just to have a second pair of eyes, especially as it gets later on in the evening. And don't forget, some of these go on till 3, half 3, sometimes even 4 in the morning. So natural human tiredness is a factor. Multiple eyes are a good idea at this point. Not only are they there to make sure that their votes end up in their pile, but they're also there to make sure that none of the other parties' votes also end up in their pile. Because obviously, if you're found guilty of electoral fraud, you forfeit and all sorts of other penalties come down. So all the party reps there are there to make sure it's scrupulously fair. Assistant returning officer is circling, other counters are double checking. So again, there's no opportunity for your vote to get tampered with. So you can use pencil, you can use pen, it does not matter. Okay? So all the votes are then, again, they're bundled and they're counted, but this time they're counted according to party. Once all the counts are complete, and as I said, that is a process that can go on until the early hours of the morning, the returning officer will ask all the candidates to come and stand behind him. Yep, this is the bit where it actually is. Now, the rest of the party reps will all be around the big tellies at the bottom of the hall. This is because the big tellies are constantly scrolling the results from all the other constituencies. So the reps will be down there, but this is the point where the candidates all have to line up. And you've probably seen this on the telly a million times. This is the point where the returning officer gets his chance to shine, and he reads out the results for each of the candidates. So he'll read their full name, he'll read exactly how many votes they've got, and that's all because of this two-step process that has been going on for the past 4, 5, 6 hours behind him. So that's exactly what happens to your vote, front and centre. I hope that this answers your questions. I'm aware that the process has been quite mystified over the years and that people are concerned that maybe their vote's not being counted, maybe they're being told things that aren't the case, maybe they're worried that their vote is somehow invalid. Invalidating your vote isn't actually hard. It's very easy to spoil your ballot paper. If in doubt, one single big clear cross. Okay, that's the best way to do it. There are spoiled ballots either through voting incompetence, if I'm honest. There are spoiled ballots from people who have deliberately and thoughtfully spoiled their ballot. And if you have got a message, I've got to be honest, some candidates will read the spoiled ballot and some candidates won't. So if you do put a thoughtful message on your ballot paper, the counter will read it. There's every chance the party reps will read it. Doesn't necessarily follow that anyone in power will. Having said that, spoil your ballot if that is your valid form of protest. That is absolutely fine. Okay. I hope you found this useful. I'll talk to you all again very soon. Good night, guys.